Hi again, folks, and welcome to segment number 5. More on the coming of the railroad. On the history of yesterday, today. Now in the early days of October 1896, it is hard to believe that just a few short months ago, the talk of the railroad was put into action, and in early July, work on the Dauphin Road had started. With eager anticipation, any and all news of the railroad was welcome news. Reported on July the 1st, 1896, the survey party was running the line east of Oka River, being slowed somewhat by scrub and brush. By the end of July, 5 contractors and their crews were hard at work, stretched over about 25 miles of the route. As excitement grew in the Dauphin district with the knowledge of the coming of the railroad, anticipation and angst was palpable, wondering where the new town on the Vermilion would be situated. The future for the Dauphin country was to rest on the coming of the rail, and by mid-August, it was reported that there were about 250 teams at work on the Dauphin Road. Reported on October the 7th of 1896, the news report read as follows, quote, "It is hard to believe that there are people who have been skeptical up to this late date of the completion of the Dauphin Railway this fall, but it is only 1 week since we met an intelligent settler who would hardly be convinced that construction could reach here this fall. He argued that they had been 6 months building 30 miles and that it was impossible to build 50 miles in the time that remains this fall. There are many who argue the same way, but it is rather because they do not understand the conditions." End quote. The first 30 miles of the road was graded in a very wet country in the beginning of a very wet season by a comparatively small gang of men and horses. It is safe to say that in the last 30 days, there has been twice as much grading done as in the 2 months previous. The company now has a very large force on the ground and is practically all covered to Fork River. This is the best part of the season for grading, and the very best part of the ground is not being broken, so that taken all round, the conditions were all unfavorable in the spring and are now all favorable for rapid grading operations, and the speed and excellence with which the grading is now being done is a marvel to the most skeptical. The track laying is keeping pace and in very short time will reach the Vermilion, so that those who would believe nothing till they saw the road here will have opportunity for conviction. Of course, it is hard to blame people who have been here for years for not being aided to realize that a railroad to Dauphin was at last a reality. News of the day brought excitement and to some a continued degree of skepticism. How could a project of this size and scope be done in the timeline proposed? Evidence of something big coming when in early October, the lumber to build a 25,000 bushel elevator was now on the ground for the Dauphin elevator. Word had been received that the station at Plymouth had been completed and that the first engine for the new road had been at work for over a week. It had also been learned that the Northwest Telegraph Company had been awarded the contract to put up the telegraph line to Dauphin, a task that was happening alongside those grading the new road. In the first week of October of 1896, the postponed sale of the town lots at the Dauphin town site took place. A good crowd was present, mostly from the incentive of curiosity. However, as only 20 became purchasers, the prices were considered pretty stiff, though not nearly so high as had been rumored. The sale was held on the ground at the corner of what is to be Main Street and Front Street. Mr. Burroughs being in charge and George Barker Sr. acting as the auctioneer. There was a good deal of curiosity as to the upset prices to be put on the lots, which was one of the terms of sale as read. The first lot was put up at the upset price of $250, which was the highest. $160, $175, and $200 being paid for the other by each purchaser. The terms associated with the purchase of each lot was that within 6 months, a building valued at least at $300 was to be erected as a cash payment of 1/3, the other 2/3 in 12 and 18 months. Progress was indeed being made, and by mid-October 1896, it was reported that the steel had been laid some 5 miles on the Dauphin side of Elliott's. With the track-laying machine assisting with the laying of steel, it was reported that the crew was accomplishing about 2 miles a day. And with the grading of the road having reached Dauphin and moved beyond, it was reported that the graveling contractors were now covering the ground to within 20 miles of Winnipegosis. Indeed, in a very short time, a lot of work was accomplished on what was to be known as the Dauphin Road. Stay tuned for segment number 6, coming at you next time. Until then, stay well, my friends.